Hello, and welcome to episode 196 of Quarkus Insights. We're going to be talking about real-world Quarkus with Adam Bean. So, I'm one of your hosts, Sally Cummins, and we've got lots more hosts. So we've got Max Anderson today, and we've got Dimitris as well. And before we go to Adam, we can look at news, mostly because I then get to push the news button, which is very exciting. So have we got any news?
Well, one thing is the Quarkus blog. We created a blog about Gentic AI, which is all the hype at the moment. But if you want to try out, there's this part, and it's going to be more just kind of showing how to use Gentic AI with Quarkus. It's not, you don't have to install some Python framework. You can actually do that with Quarkus itself. And yeah, Mariafus could just kind of go through the different workflows and the next one I think is going to be a bit more agentic. But yeah, it's just nice to see like in practice how these work, and I thought it'd be worthwhile to highlight. And otherwise, we are doing the Quarkus releases as always. We have Quarkus 19 coming up, which is going to be the start of our next LTS. So yeah, exciting times.
And you've been busy with foundation work as well, haven't you?
Yes, so we are in the process of moving Quarkus to Common House, and literally today I just took all the possible repositories, and it's 277 if you include everything. It's probably not going to be all of it. It's going to be in stages, but yeah, it surprised me every time how much is actually in Quarkus and Quarkus combined. It's quite a big number.
People are too busy and need to do less, so that Max has less work.
Yes, that'll be great. But
somewhat more complicated than JBang, right?
Yeah, JBang is just it's still too many. It's like 20, but yeah, it's definitely smaller, more approachable. Yeah, less people to figure out with, so it works. But yeah.
And with that, I think we can go on to our main topic for today, which is that we're really lucky to have Adam Bean as a guest. And so he's going to be telling us about some of his experiences in the field with Quarkus, which is always good to hear. But I guess before we get into that, Adam, do you want to give a bit of an introduction of who you are and what kind of things you do with Java and for Java?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the invitation, and sorry for the coordination overhead, but it was lots going on last year. And yeah, I'm a freelancer, and I like Java and working with Java since I'm freelancer since 1997, and working with Java since 1995. And Quarkus, I actually didn't like the Quarkus idea at all, but at that time I created a tutorial, OpenShift tutorial for Red Hat, and someone mentioned Quarkus, and I said, okay, we had already Tomtail and the Whitefly Swarm, and I was just happy with Whitefly. I didn't care about Quarkus, but I tried it out, and I said, okay, this is actually something revolutionary. And yeah, this is my introduction to Quarkus. And since then, I think 95% of is Quarkus, and the remaining part is plain Java on the backend. This is how it looks right now. Yeah, we have some migration projects, but everything new is Quarkus basically. So I would say 90% or yeah.
Holly, before we start, there's one question for Adam, because he does it to everyone, and I want to do it to him. What was your first computer?
At ZX Spectrum Amstrad, of course, and yeah. But back then, there was no Quarkus on Amstrad, so there was the load. There was no Quarkus dev. It was just load, as I remember, Command R, and yeah. And now but keep it secret and private. The menu was in French, and I don't understand French, so this was my problem. So I only could understand not understand. I saw the Visual Basic, the basic code, but not the explanation. So now you know everything about me. Can you see my screen? My wonderful slide. Oh, perfect. This is yeah. Holly was already excited that she has some buttons. I don't have any buttons, so I only can show what I have. So so real world Quarkus. First, AHEX Industries. All links about me. It was just fun. someone thought that Airhex is a company and this is just a website. So immediately after the question, I registered the domain. Then, yeah, maybe I'm strange, but I really like Java. My original plan was to learn as many programming languages as possible, but I never managed to do that. So I basically only know JavaScript in the front end and Java. And I never did anything in Python, I guess. A little bit of Groovy, but it looked like Java, basically. And I renamed it to Groovy. And yeah, this is what I did, or what I do. What's maybe surprising, I was at JFocus conference and also met some Red Hat, actually, people, which I will, and recorded interviews, and they will be published on my channel. But what was interesting, I was curious how many shorts I actually have on YouTube, and it was impossible because it is, how to call it, it is not consistent YouTube. YouTube always told me about 700, but they're actually more than 800, and they are very, very popular, which surprises me. There's like 2,000 views per short on average. For Java, I think it is a lot. So, so we had a chat before that Java is actually more popular than you might think. And when I record such shorts, usually in boring meetings, not like here. I mean, this is a bit problematic, but if there's no meeting, discussion, architecture on PowerPoint, whatever, then it's enough time to hack some shorts. So these are relevant podcasts. And maybe, I don't know, Dan and Max, have you the opportunity to hear the podcast with Mark Fleury? Max, the question to you now.
Yeah, no, that was
because this was actually fun because Mark Fleury is the guy who created JBoss, and I briefed him at the end whether he knows about Quarkus, and he was really delighted. And this was actually fun conversations. There were even something about angels, which was interesting. So if you like, have some fun, Fleury. So first Monday of the month, you can ask me questions. If this, you can shoot questions right now, but if you are shy, you can wait 1 month. But usually, I would expect questions right now. Okay, that's all. Some patterns and so some workshops, if you like. But whether you like or not, I always show you the slides because I cannot hear it anymore. Java is too slow. Fact is, Java is crazy fast in the cloud. Not only in the cloud, and what it means is we have here the energy consumption is number 5 after ADA, C++, Rust, and C, and performance is the same. And this is why I'm doing Java all the time, because speed means saving money. That's basically it. And on premises, we use GraalVM, or actually with OpenShift, always Mandrel, because it's, I don't know, it's bundled with the support from Red Hat. And why we use on OpenShift GraalVM, because yeah, because we can save a lot of memory. There was also a podcast about that. So one of my clients, they saved more than other day. They improved the density by using Mandrel with Quarkus twice, right? So they saved a lot of money on premise. So, and this is the last one slide with a theoretical, because I get the question all the time. What this means is this costs Quarkus in the cloud. If I would run Quarkus 2 transactions per second, and every request is 100 milliseconds, is more than enough. Usually it's 5, 10, 20 milliseconds. And 2 gigs of RAM, which is important because then I get 1 CPU. It will cost me $50. And with this slide, this leads usually to projects. So this is the magic slides. It's important for management. What are the costs? And these are the costs, which is amazing. And yeah, and which when Java would be slower. So if this increases here, then we have to pay more. This is how it works. Okay, enough slides. What do I like to talk today is standards. So how we approach Quarkus and standards, how I structure my projects, a little bit about system testing, and then write ones run anywhere with Quarkus, which is especially interesting. And then maybe if you have some time, serverless. And if audience has some questions, then ask me. And of course, I expect at least one question from Holly, Max, and our chief executive officer. So, MicroProfile. So, what's the deal with Jakarta E and MicroProfile, and why we care? And I have to say, my clients and me, we care a lot about that, because if we pick Jakarta E or MicroProfile extensions for Quarkus, they're usually based on small RAI. And of course, you are the Quarkus guys, so correct me if I'm wrong. This is my understanding. And the small RAI is larger than Quarkus. So OpenLiberty and the others are also using small RAI. So it means what happens then is we are less dependent on a particular extension or bus factor from developer. And it looks basically like the old Java E application server, which is a good thing. Because recently we had to migrate, no kidding, I think it was 20 years old Java E project with service locator and initial context lookup and EJBs, and to Quarkus, and it worked, actually. This was surprising how well it worked. We removed all the, add EJB, we replaced it with add inject, but it was more or less fun to delete code. And this only works if we have standards. So it would be impossible to migrate, Glassfish to Vertex, let's say. Forget it. So this is why, for me, standards are important because we focus on boring stuff or focus on boring stuff. We don't have to focus on boring stuff, and we focus on solving the problem. And this is why usually in projects in Quarkus, we use this here, especially on premises. We use parts of CDI, JSON binding, or Jackson. It really depends. I always start with JSON binding, and the performance is enough. With Jackson is faster, but this is good enough. Annotations, they are there. Sometimes interceptors, rest is always there. And I would say in more complex projects, we always use JSONP. So I have to say, if we have multiple versions of an endpoint, or there's something more challenging, we always use the JSONP, which looks like a hash map, but it's JSON. This is basically it, and persistence depends on the project. So for instance, with modern Java, in some projects, we already thought, okay, do we really have to use JPA or just go with JDBC and records for complex? Is even more standardized, right, than persistence, and with Java 21 plus could be really convenient. So any questions to the audience? So it should be interactive. Everyone happy with that? If yes.
I remember.
Huh?
Oh, I'm saying, I remember when you showed me this the first time, which we in the early days, you wanted us to have a Jakarta profile extension that just included everything.
Yeah.
Do you still do that?
I would like to have that. No kidding. And what I really have from what I cannot show you is some templates I built for clients. This is basically a GitHub project with all the dependencies. And what happens then is we have all the MicroProfile dependencies one after each other. And I don't like it. So one extension would be nicer, I have to say. Yeah. And also Quarkus is, I would say, we have all the, also we put all the small RAI and Jakarta dependencies and extensions, and it's still fast enough. This is it's actually not worth, to save on extensions in this particular case, because it's fast enough. If you imagine JSONP, for instance, there's just, this is and we always need it, right? So it changes a bit in the cloud, for instance, because we need even less, right? And by the way, the super extension in the pandemic time, I was almost done, but had no time to complete it. I overestimated the amount of my free time, and then stopped doing that. But I actually was about to create like super extension with contains all the MicroProfile extensions, right?
Yeah. So before you continue, those migrations were manual, or you used some sort of tooling to help bring those Java applications to Quarkus?
So they were manual because they were always also coupled with code reviews, right? So it was not just, it was not enough to make it work. We wanted to improve the situation, and but they could be automated, I think. Okay. It could be automated, but there was always strange things, my old projects, no problem, because I exactly knew we could automate that. But sometimes there were strange frameworks with classes created with new, some classes were injected, so it was not as consistent as one may think. So, okay.
Oh, and now, before you go on, we've got our first question as well, which is, and they're starting with an easy one. What's your take on the use of reactive paradigm?
Yeah. I don't like it, never used that, and I'm really glad that we have Project Loom. And I think, or completely, yeah. I don't like the hype that everything had to be reactive. But if you have something like Kafka, reactive is the way to go. I have to be clear what I mean. There are some reactive use cases where reactive is perfect, but most of the use cases are not reactive. So for me, reactivity means it's a stream of events, and I'm reacting to the events and do something. But I would never implement with JAX-RS with reactivity, because for me, HTTP is not reactive. And I'm glad that Quarkus supports Loom and virtual threads. And funny story, some of my clients wanted to have high performance Quarkus, and it turned out that if you do nothing with Quarkus, it was orders of magnitude faster than the peak requirement of my client. So if we even put reactive on top of that, we would be, I think, 20 times faster than the most demanding service on my client. And this was a big client. And I say, okay, we could do this, but we have now maybe 30 years until we reach the boundary there, right? So I would say, from my perspective, what I like simple code, measure that, and I would just no optimization, put vanilla Quarkus and see what happens. And so far, if you do nothing, vanilla Quarkus was fast enough, and everyone was surprised by the speed. So for me, there is no reason to use reactive programming in standard use cases.
I keep trying to persuade everyone that our new advertising for Quarkus should be Clement does reactive programming so that you don't have to.
Yeah, behind the scene, Quarkus is reactive, but I don't care. This is like the cool story is all the strange stuff is hidden for me, and I can use just vanilla Java, what I used 1997. So the code looks the same, but it's very fast. This is important thing. No magic.
Yeah, and it's also important to actually think that's always been our message. It's just reactive was such a big thing of the Java ecosystem at the time that people just honed in on. Oh, we do that's reactive, and somehow extensively called reactive, even though that we just meant that we could also do reactive. Right? You didn't have to just imperative. So no, I 100% agree with you. Like most cases, you don't even need virtual threads and Loom for many cases.
Yeah, exactly. Especially not if you have CPU bound. I mean, then it is pointless. So of course, this is what I actually do. I write simple code, and it in 90% of all cases is good enough. So this is surprising, right? So this is no optimizations. But this is boring. This is maybe why Java is a problem, because you write simple code and you are done. And in other languages, you have no experiments or whatever, nice terms. So in Java, we write a method and we are done with Quarkus. That's maybe the problem, right? But it's good for vacations. So if you prefer vacations, do Java. If you would like to have more fun, do other languages, because Java, most of the problems are already solved. What this is MicroProfile. And I get lots of questions. What's my take on MicroProfile in Jakarta? And I don't care. I have to say, for me, it's the same. This is as far as I know, the same people are working on both. I focus on Jakarta. Basically, what I always need is CDI and JAX-RS. And interestingly, for instance, REST client I use always for testing. This is this one. OpenAPI sometimes, not always. OpenTelemetry on-premise always, in the cloud never. Config always the case. So we always have to inject configuration. JSON Web Token in the cloud always. In on-premise, even OpenID OIDC extension, even more. Health in the cloud, serverless doesn't make any sense. On-premise, absolutely. And the fault tolerance is interesting one, because fault tolerance we always use with LangChain4j and LLM. So the cool story is, for me, the LangChain4j and Quarkus and LLMs, they really look like microservice architecture 10 years ago, what we hyped. So you can actually apply all the microservice patterns we learned, circuit breaker, retry, because the LLMs are you get throttled, they are slow. If one model is not available, you can pick another one. So actually, we always use the fault tolerance in the LLM projects.
You said you didn't use metrics and observability in the cloud?
No. Costs. For instance, in the cloud, this is a longer story, but if we are on-premise, we always set on standard. So usually we have OpenShift, we have Prometheus, and all the stack we did for years. But in the cloud, there is no Prometheus. So if you would like to have a Prometheus on AWS, you will have to install a managed Prometheus. And this is expensive. But if you do nothing and you write log files, you get the alarms and everything for free. So in the cloud, we focus less on standards and focus more on cost savings. And on premise, we have Prometheus. So this is the big difference between clouds. Because on clouds, Grafana, for instance, you will have to install Grafana and maintain Grafana. But for instance, on AWS, we pick CloudWatch and we are done. There is nothing else to do. And we can write in specific format and we get alarms and everything for free. And with Quarkus, it works perfectly.
Got it.
Interesting.
So I would say, but this is a dangerous territory because people say, okay, I'm not about, I'm not for open source, whatever. It means if you are in the cloud, costs is the only thing which matters. Cost-driven architecture. This is what we talk what we speak about, because we go to the calculator now and try to estimate the costs, and every decision is cost-driven. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. We could, pick OpenShift, install this on the largest available EC2 machine, but no one could pay for it, right? So this is the problem.
Okay, got it. So you don't need any spans and stuff. You don't do in
X-ray built in.
X-ray, yeah. Okay. Well, I thought you had to send data, but okay, cool.
So if you, for instance, from Quarkus, if you talk to S3, Quarkus is on Lambda, and X-ray works. Dynamo would be the same. So this is already built in.
Sure, got it. Okay.
Perfect. And Azure is similar. There's Azure Functions, and you can run Quarkus. There's also Azure Monitor. So a very similar story. We have one question, Oli. Should we answer this right now?
Yes, let's go for it. So how do you introduce Quarkus at the work floor? Since almost Java use Spring shops to use Spring Boot, do you even use Spring Boot, or do you just take Spring Boot when you see it and migrate it to Quarkus?
Yeah, this is not Spring. It's a spying boot. I never heard. This is my internal code name, spying boot. But the Spring Boot, very easy in the cloud. Quarkus is faster, and faster means cheaper. Period. So so for me, it was never an option to use Spring Boot. And also, funny story. I was hired to help a project with cloud native Java, because they said, okay, they would like to use Lambda, but it boots 10 seconds. It's like, it's impossible what you're doing there. And they had such a spying boot with lots of log frameworks, and it took 10 seconds until it booted. And then we replaced that with Quarkus, and it booted without any, I think, 2 to 3 seconds. It was already 3 times faster, just, plain. So, that's my story. So, I could, no reason for me to use Spring Boot. And I have to admit, I never used Spring Boot because it was, for me, it's like a complete different world. And what's nice about Quarkus is it is crazy fast, and it looks exactly the same as Whitefly for me, old application server. So we can transfer all the knowledge we can, migrate old projects from Whitefly to Quarkus if my clients like. And very cool.
Adam, before you go on, what's the percentage of, let's say, serverless versus non-serverless apps used in the cloud?
Depends on the project. So you in recent years, I'm hired like hard to tell what's my role is. My clients would like to know what to do. They don't care. A solution. They would like to have a solution, and they have Java developers, and they are waiting for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I talk to manager, it showed this slide. It's serverless. The cool story is with Quarkus, what you can do is crazy. I was actually longer story. I was the JAX conference. This is a big German conference, and I on stage deployed Quarkus, which was in serverless mode, and showed actually how fast it is, and showed the slide. And next year, attendees stood up. This was like 2 years ago, and this was last year, and said, I did exactly this. We have an enterprise application migrated to Quarkus on serverless, and there's a huge company, and everyone accesses us, and it's like, how much you pay? And he said, 80 euros a month. The traffic has to be already crazy. So it means right now, all my enterprise projects are serverless. And this project, which are not serverless, is because my client insists to have specific things, right? So they can do whatever they like. But this is the interesting part. But the cool story is with Quarkus, we are not depending on the serverless stuff. This is the unique story. So if I if I show the serverless guys who don't know about Java, they always ask me how I test the application. Then I boot Quarkus, and they cannot believe that actually it works without any external frameworks, right? So very cool. So because of costs, if we start, we do serverless, Lambda, and if the cold start is an issue, we can always ship to Fargate or to Azure App Service. And if my clients have very specific products, whatever, they can go with Kubernetes. And on-premise, I would say 80-90% is OpenShift with Mandrel. So this is what we do.
Nice.
Okay, this was the last slide because I would like to show you some code, right? And what I did before the show, this was also cool. I updated my command line interface and Quarkus. So this is now new. And the cool story is before the show, it was version 2 and it still worked. So it seems like it's a very stable command line interface. I don't use it very often. I usually clone my templates from GitHub like this. Because it's real world, I have to show what I usually do. I clone my own stuff and do something with it. But today, maybe Quarkus app create, I think. Airhacks is my real world Quarkus. And the version is 2025. And what happens right now is an error. Why? Create app, right? Create app. Max will say, because I didn't use JBank. Usually, I always use JBank, of course. But this is my Quarkus application. And okay, I should be visible. And there is a Docker, and this is the greetings resource. And if you take a look at my 10 years old presentations, you will find it exactly the same, except the Jakarta. This is what I already like. I don't have to relearn. It's just, Java is stuff on steroids. So this is what I like. We have all good eyes. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's see. So, and I can start Quarkus. And why it happens is because my command line interface is too new. And what I noticed, this 4 didn't arrive in Germany yet. So, but with 3, it should work. And it does.
That should not happen.
Yeah, this is real world Quarkus. So I show you what can go wrong and how to fix it, you know. So we have now. This also shouldn't happen, but it. So now it is. But this often happens. But I already know. So after a while, it is available. So minor thing. So the first thing I do is I delete the rest assured because it's not real world. And then I also delete this both, and they are gone. Never use that in projects. The question is why. I will show you in a second. Because what we are doing is we have 2 Quarkus projects. One is external, just for test purposes, and it accesses the first one like microservice. So I'm more flexible. The pipeline is simpler. And if I would use rest assured, I couldn't reuse the system tests. And it would be also harder to have more realistic tests. So what I can do, if I have 2 modules, I will create a module in a second. I could have multiple versions of the system tests which access the last Quarkus. So all my projects are like that. But I understand rest assured is a popular, but we never use. So we use a MicroProfile REST instead. So question so far is also, if not, please stop me or challenge me, whatever, right? So this greetings resource, this Airhacks, this would be usually company name. So in our case is Red Hat or IBM, depends. But IBM is short, I will use IBM, but Airhacks is nicer, so I keep Airhacks. But now there will be a greeter, and this greeter is the package, a business package. And then boundary is the boundary is there's an old pattern, boundary control entity pattern by Ava Jacobson, and I used the pattern for years, actually always. It is older than UML, and I structure everything like this. And I have to say, developers like it because it don't make me think. Everything looks exactly the same. I don't like the names, but it is a standard. It's available in all drawing tools. There, the icons are already available. So this is like the boundary control entity. Okay. And so this is now I have the boundary. So let's say I would like to have here something different, control, something more complex. Then let's say I create here a greeter, and should be Java. Yeah, too fast. Should be greeter, and here it is Java, and it would be application scoped. Sometimes we have our own annotation, and this now depends. In most cases, application scoped. Sometimes request scoped. On serverless, it is always application scoped because if you run Quarkus in serverless mode, what happens then as Lambda or Azure function, usually every request starts a new process. So there are never two requests in the same Quarkus. So it then doesn't make any sense to have requests. This is the main difference actually between serverless and service full on whatever, however you call it. So yeah, and what I could also do is a message, and this is the config property, and let's name it also message, and default value is hey Max and Holly. I have to look up Holly with double L, right? So this is real world. So, and this will be Quarkus, but I don't like to be too dependent on Quarkus. Therefore, I always do this, which is redundant, but this is the MicroProfile way. Okay. So, and public string, let's go greet, and return hello. Whatever. I just would like to show you the how it usually looks like, because what we have here is the dependency injection, and then we can proceed actually. Greeter, and this is the dependency injection. Pick the right one. Okay, and this greeter dot what was it? Greet, yeah, greet and plus. This was already perfect. So I only need my browser, localhost, and 8080, and this seems to work. This is the dev tools, and hello, Max and Holly. So this was the simplest possible application with a little bit more structure. And the structure is, greeter is the business unit or component, business component, boundary control entity are the layers. And this is the only standardized layering I know. There are also the icons, even UML stereotypes, and entity is missing. Entity would be a Java record, a JPA, domain class, and I would say all my projects for 20 years look like this. Okay.
Yeah. So I just noticed like you added the inject because it was in Quarkus you don't need it, but you need it for MicroProfile. Someone should make an open read-write rule that goes between the two, like make it compatible and make it optimized.
Yeah, or MicroProfile could make it obsolete because if it's not needed, right? Because I mean, the convention is nice, but what I don't like that you are then depending on Quarkus. I mean, this is a small dependent, but you know, this is the slippery slope, I would say, right? So yeah. But and I think the absolute strength of Quarkus is that you can build absolute standard applications which are crazy fast. So this is the unique feature. So if we leave, you know, the standards, I don't know whether you remember back then Glassfish. What I really like about Glassfish is you could there was a reference implementation, and you can buy support from Sun. This was a killer feature, and for me, it's Quarkus similar right now, right? So this is you can buy support from Red Hat. I hope. I know because my clients have support. So from Red Hat, and it is standard. So it means in worst case we can move from Quarkus to Helidon or OpenLiberty or Whitefly. So this is actually important in larger projects. And what's also cool is if you know MicroProfile, you know Quarkus. Okay. Since we're speaking about real world developers, this is actually a cool story. A young developer started with Quarkus, and they told me, okay, the Quarkus is crazy to learn. There are lots of tutorials. And I said, what are you talking about? And they showed me all the tutorials. It's like, I never read them, actually. It's like, why? It's like, because I'm starting with MicroProfile. So if you take a look at MicroProfile and you search for the examples, this is just very easy to follow. Maybe you need 3 annotations and you're ready to go. And then they say, this is great. We didn't know that. So what they started is with JAX-RS, for instance, tutorial. And in Quarkus, you show, all the possibilities, what you can do. This is how it should be. But if someone starts, it's just all the possibilities, with Jackson, with JSONB and whatever. And then I say, okay, take a look at MicroProfile first. And if you know that, then go to Quarkus. And this was actually a very good idea for starters. Cool. Now, what we can do right now. So now we have it. Maybe if someone asks, why Quarkus is so great, is because if we say Maven package, what Quarkus does is it deploys at build time. And usually what I do, I decompile the code and show you actually that there's no reflection inside, but now maybe there is more interesting stuff to do. But so what it means is the entire magic of Quarkus is that the extensions are optimizing at build time. And my old application servers like Whitefly and Glassfish did the same at runtime. And because they did it in runtime, the entire machinery had to be, a part of the application server. And in the case of Quarkus, the application at runtime is just, I would say, a very boring bytecode, optimized bytecode, right? So no dependency injection, no reflection, no dynamic behavior. It's just fast, straightforward bytecode. Cool. So now testing, right? So we have this, and take a look at our dependencies. So what we have is the following. So we have Quarkus REST. We have the dependency injection. Quarkus REST is basically JAX-RS. And I think this already includes, it was renamed the reactive machinery behind the hood. Back then there was I think classic and reactive, right? And now we only have Quarkus REST. So this is the new development, which is very good. So what I also use is for testing, I use for unit tests AssertJ. And why this? Because but this is don't like to write unit tests now. This is AssertJ, and then AssertJ core, I think. J core. Because why this? Because the built-in JUnit stuff is not good actually. So this is what I usually have, and the scope is test. This is nothing about Quarkus, but all my unit tests. If I write unit tests, I write the unit tests with the assertions with AssertJ. So this is what is missing. Exactly. So and this was my fault sometimes. So no worries. Any questions?
We've got. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
This isn't related directly to what you're showing, except about the size of what you're showing. So Stupendous Follow 65 has pointed out that this isn't the most complex code he's ever seen, or she's ever seen. And do you know of big open source projects that are using Quarkus apart from Keycloak?
Not open source, but in projects with. Actually, in project where this is not open source. This is the problem. But in commercial projects, the interesting part is with modern Java and Quarkus, I think we can eliminate, no kidding, 60% of the source code. So and our projects, what we even do is we try to build monolith. So we are not building lots of Quarkus, but monolith, and especially on serverless. In some projects, we had several hundred classes. In as one Lambda, and because Quarkus eliminates, the overhead, tree shaking, so forth, it works perfectly. So yeah, I have NDAs, so I cannot show you this, but yeah, this is what I can tell. But believe me, there are lots of large open source and large commercial Quarkus projects, right? Yeah.
And we've got sorry, go on, Max.
There are. This reminds me, we should actually create a list of these things because there are a few out there, and right now I cannot remember them. But if you want to see a bigger one, you can. The code to code Quarkus is actually a Quarkus app. The bot we have for doing stuff is also a Quarkus app. So if we actually inside Quarkus, we have examples of, let's say, real applications. And I know there's 1 or 2 Apache projects that are either already done or moving to Quarkus. So there will be some in the future that we can do. But these would be good to have. These, like, let's call them real applications.
Maybe one project is also interesting. It's actually my blog. I had to port it to somewhere, and it is MicroProfile and Quarkus. So, and I had to port it from Roller, which is huge. And in Quarkus is maybe, I don't know, 30 classes. It's the same. So my new blog is absolutely Quarkus without any external dependencies. Okay. I think a little structure, so you can imagine.
Nope,
so
sorry, we're not going to let you go on yet. We've got more questions.
How big of a project in lines or code have you deployed as lambdas? Currently, in one project, we have several hundred endpoints. And it means several hundred JAX-RS classes, plus everything behind. So I would say several hundred classes. Startup time, maybe 3 seconds, code startup time. And at runtime, milliseconds, like 20 milliseconds, right? It depends. If we hit something and we have to wait, of course, then it's slower. But just from,
And we've got another question about build times for when you're getting to these quite big projects.
It's a pity that I cannot start my project, but it is amazing. So the build time. So what actually happens? We start the Lambda in dev mode, and we start several hundred unit tests, and I think the entire process maybe 10 seconds at most with unit tests. So I don't know how big the project is, but this is not my experience. So it's actually at the beginning I thought it will be slow, Quarkus, but it never was. This is amazing. So this is what I can tell you, right? So
well, I think Adam, you're being like the perfect user, right? You're following the standard. You're following small
you're right.
modifications.
We have no dependencies, right?
I have
no dependencies.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so you don't use. Yeah, but the thing is, so I don't know what dependency is doing, but this is abnormal. But it can happen. Let's say I did have someone who was taking, for example, a REST endpoint and used the OpenAPI generator so the source was small, but the generation was like thousands of classes to call an API endpoint. That takes time. And so if that's done in a, let's call it, dumb way, as in no extension to the note about the Quarkus lifecycle, then it might be triggered every time. So if you have those issues, Stupend Tools follow 65, do come on our Zulip chat or something and just kind of outline what you're doing, because it is not normal. It just should only happen if you have like a lot of classes. And even if you have a lot of classes, either A, you probably have a way to turn it off and we can help you with that, or B, you found a bug that we just need to fix. But I know, for example, when we did the Hibernate, we had like one of our like standard tests is like tens of thousands of entities. And if that takes more than a second or two to load, there's something wrong. But you might have found something. So it's abnormal. And if you have it, we would like to hear it. But I assume there's something that is causing it.
There's a useful view in the dev UI as well. You can see the build steps, and you can see how long each build step is taking. So you might be able to isolate it to like one build step one kind of build step that's taking a while, and then that would give you something to debug. Sorry, Adam, go on.
And also just to add, I mean, if you have a huge monolith, right, then probably a good idea to start breaking it into more manageable pieces, right? Because I mean, the primary use case for Quarkus is like, small things that you want to deploy separately, not like the huge thing. So I don't know if this is the case, but yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, but what is huge, right? So in one project there were multiple. They built a whitefly application for years, and we redid it with Quarkus in maybe under 1 year, and it was way smaller than the old one, but we have only one package. So now there's the same functionality, but not that much code. And what we never do is no external dependencies, and we are very strict with it. Even Bouncy Castle, no Bouncy Castle, for instance. So if possible, we build it, we pick, JDK. Why? Because we have to care about the dependencies. And if there is a security flaw, we have to patch it. And this is problematic. So this is where I try to avoid. What I also don't do, I never use the Quarkus dev services. The reason being is if I need Postgres or Kafka or whatever, what we do, we set up this first. We have a test environment on OpenShift or in the cloud, and we use the real thing. Because with Quarkus, it's too easy. So if you now just use Quarkus, it will work. And I have then the problem that it never works in the real environment. So, and this is why I never use that. I don't like to see this, how easy this is. And it works. Quarkus will create Kafka topics for you and so forth. But what we do is with Java infrastructure as code, we create everything up front, and Quarkus just uses the existing resources, right? And so this is why maybe this is if you use the dev service. I can imagine if Quarkus starts in Kafka and creates the topics. Of course, it will take a little bit because Kafka takes a little bit, right? So I mean, if you do use the dev service, it's slower, right?
Yeah, that's dev service or like Kafka or Firefly, not Firefly,
Flyway, exactly.
Any data migration. If they run every time because you have something inappropriate set up, then yeah, you'll hit that too. So for sure.
So and now the first unusual trick. So if I do here Maven package, so what happens is I get a production jar. So this is no surprises. So if you go to target, I think it is in Quarkus app, right? And then Quarkus app, and then Quarkus run. So I can launch this way. So and this was my bare metal Quarkus. But now comes the trick. So what you saw is what we could do is we could create a Docker, or the Docker file is already here, and we could deploy now the Quarkus on bare metal with Docker files on Docker. So this is already there. We could use that. Or now comes the cool stuff. And what we can also do, there is one extension. And this font is too big, but the extension is Amazon Lambda HTTP. So if I add this and do the package again, magic happens. So if you go here, you see there is no more Quarkus app, and what we see instead is function.zip. So what we can do is we can put, so for instance, if you put this to a Maven profile, you can have in one CI/CD pipeline Quarkus, which runs in Docker, and the same code runs as Lambda at the same time. And with that alone, you can do crazy stuff. You can have application load balancer, and you can handle peak loads with Lambda and base load with Docker, for instance, or Kubernetes or whatever you have. And with that as well, you see my old Java code becomes serverless. So there is no dependency on the cloud. So this is also why my clients like it that much, because they say, okay, if something happens to AWS, we go to Azure Functions. And by the way, we could migrate that to Azure Function the same way. There is just a Maven plugin instead of an extension, but this works very similarly. Okay.
Nice.
Now, and
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, and the most frequently asked question here is, okay, but how many endpoints can you have? And now this is where Quarkus and Java shines over Python and Node.js and the other languages, because what happens behind the scenes is in the clouds is there is a kind of a load balancer or API gateway or something like this, and this is always on, and it exposes an endpoint and path. And if someone calls the endpoint, what the endpoint does, it creates an JSON event, which is consumed by generic Quarkus Lambda, and Quarkus parses the JSON and invokes my JAX-ORS application. It means for me, I can have hundreds of endpoints. I don't care. So I'm actually misusing functions and lambdas as cheap runtime with Quarkus. And this is unique, without being depending on Quarkus. And now what I have here, I have a lambda.
Before you go on, Adam, we've got another question about whether you've used checkpointing or crack with lambdas.
Yeah, this is one setting. It's called snap start, and then it is crack-like technology, and then you can cut the startup time a half with Quarkus. It will start roughly in 1.5 seconds the first time. And there is also another trick. If you say, okay, I'm a little bit afraid of the cold starts, you have two tricks actually. Small projects, you can have a cron jobs which pings Quarkus every minute, and then for one, it's good enough. We pay nothing because I think 1 million invocations per month are free. And the more professional solution is provision concurrency. You can set up Quarkus to one instance, and you will pay, I think, 15 to 20 euros are fixed costs, but it will get never cold, the Quarkus. It will be always there. And the cool story is, if you have a heavy load, this is even cheaper than the normal one. So, okay. Snapstart is optional. We activate crack or snapstart towards the end of the project because the pipelines are slower. It takes time until Quarkus replicates in all availability zones. The memory, so what happens, Quarkus is started several times. The memory is taken, encrypted, and distributed in data centers, and this takes time. So the deployment is maybe 2 minutes slower than without crack. And at the development time, it is fast enough because you have to wait 2 seconds first, and then it's as crazy fast anyway. Now, unique feature of Quarkus. So what we have here, we have a lambda. You say I cannot just run it again with that. So it's I was in the target. I think this should be gone. So it's no more there, right? So what it means is if I pick this and copy it over, I would have a lambda. So this is everything is already packaged. And what's cool story is this is the official Quarkus extension. So now, but what still works is def if it's not like this. So what this is unique. What I have right now is I have AWS Lambda, which behaves like MicroProfile, and I can have here checkpoints, debugging, profiling, and it works locally. Now the other questions: what if we have to access S3 or DynamoDB or something in the cloud? You can still do it. So this local Quarkus can absolutely access the clouds. Okay, so this was. And this was one of the most asked questions, how I test the serverless locally. And I say, at the beginning, I couldn't even understand the questions of what do I mean. I just thought Quarkus. Because if you pick other solutions, they are not able to do that. So like, the hybrid deployment, you have a dev mode plus production deployment with Lambda packaging.
Yeah. No, it's funny because this one actually took it forever. Bill Burke worked on it, and it's like, but it's nice to see this. I haven't actually seen this shown this way before because, when you have it all set up, then it's all nice.
But it did it from scratch. This is there was nothing. Yeah, this is. I even had to look it up because I do it maybe once a year and have the template, which I'll show in a second, and it gets even better. So. What I wanted to show you is another power thing. This is one of the also most asked questions. And Quarkus, this one. And what I do is another project ST. And in this project, so there is no source main. is only source test. And source test, so this we don't need. This we could reuse. This would end with IT for a reason, because if you call it test, then if you perform Maven package, it will call the unit test. But this is what I don't like to have in the pipeline. I would like to have Maven package or compile first, and then say Maven failsafe that it runs, the tests without any tricks. So, and this has to be Quarkus resource IT. And what happens here is hello and no rest assured. Why not? Because we use a MicroProfile REST client for that. And I think, I always forget the dependency. REST client, I think, right? You know that?
Yep.
Cool. So this one, and always. And by the way, I don't even know whether I have here the Quarkus extension installed. I have the Java Red Hat extension, which ships with Microsoft, I think, JUnit tests support. So this is what I have here. Exactly, and this is the snapshot for Quarkus. The host is great. So there's all the, all the links are already there. So this is that's basically all. So what I usually would do is so remove that and create MicroProfile REST client interface. So I forgot to copy it over, so we'll have to implement this from scratch. And I call it always greetings resource client Java. And this is an interface. It has to ship with register REST client. And the base URI I never use in production. I use the which is resolved in the properties, but for now it's maybe easier to see this way. And path was hello. And as I said, I usually copy and paste it over. But so, and now it's the big difference. In JAX-RS, the return value was string or JSON. And during the tests, I would like to have a response because I would like to check the status, the headers, and so forth. So this is always more complex at the beginning. Pick this one, hello, and hello. And this has to be get, and I think produces the right one. And this is a media type text plain. Media type text plain. I think it could work. So now let's try that. So what I can do right now is add inject REST client, and this inject has to be imported. REST client, also import MicroProfile, and now greetings resource client, resource under test, and this what was it? Hello. I hope. Yeah. And what I get back is a response, var response. And so usually I will have, the assert J, assert that, response get status is okay. What I also build my own assertions over time. And for today, interestingly, my IDE behaves differently. No, it's just slow somehow. Response get status. Response get status. Response get status. Should be like that. It is strange. So with a little bit of luck, it could work. So if we go here, so this is the Quarkus, and if I run the test here, it's green, 200. So this is how my system tests are looking like. And now the cool story happens. So now fun begins, because people say, okay, but this is a lot to do, right? So first, what we achieved here is we build a production tests for our microservice API. So the collateral damages, I could actually, I will do this right now, source main Java Airhacks. I can actually move it here. If I move the client here and build a project, I get a jar, which is reusable. It means I can pick the client and give to other microservices, and I get the best tested microservice API client, right? So what's also interesting is, this is now hard to explain because my application is too simple, but imagine we would create something like, the session management for Quarkus Insights. So what I will have to do is I will have to create a schedule new insight, and then fetch it and search for it and so forth. But the schedule new insight, I will have to call it over and over again in unit tests. So what we do over time is we create Java classes here with more logic, and we inject the classes to greetings resource IT. So not the interface, rather than a ready-to-use class with add inject with some logic, and we have like test DSL. And the longer we work with the project, the easier testing becomes. And as a collateral added value, we get a jar. We can check into a Maven project, and for instance, this jar is reused for performance tests. So we can use the same jar and start it on the load, and to see how our service behaves.
Yeah, very nice.
And if you like, we could schedule, just a session about that, because if I start with it, we'll need half an hour just about testing. But it's and what we ignore, I have to tell, unit tests, because who cares about unit tests in microservices? I don't care about code coverage. I would like to see that someone calls my service from outside. And the first challenge is like how to get the JSON Web Tokens, whatever. So we implement that. So we go to Keycloak, get the token, or to Cognito, get the token. So we try to automate everything at the beginning, and then we get faster and faster. And you gain the confidence. And the unit tests come later because we only test complex code.
Very nice. I think we had a few more.
We did, yeah. So there was one about why you were using the Docker files rather than cloud build packs.
I always use Docker files, unfortunately never from Quarkus. And the reason being is because, for instance, none of my clients will use that. Some of my clients have from Red Hat Mandrel images, others have Zulu JDKs, and we always have to adjust that. So it means in my world, this looks almost identical, but we always have a base image with company certificates or whatever. So we have to use our own Docker files on premise. In the cloud, we never use Docker. And in the cloud, in the recent years, I never used Docker. Everything was serverless. And sometimes we need Docker for testing, so we don't use Kubernetes. We use simpler solutions for that.
So just for information, so we have a thing. It's not going to be in 3.20, but I hope in the next one, because it's been on the to-do for a long time. One of the weaknesses of you point out one weakness on the Docker file is they are pre-generated with a header. You can always change it. But what we want to do is actually generate these based on your project, because in this one, it's probably the same. But once you start adding extension, like some of the Kafka or else that has native dependencies too, the native Docker file will be out of date. So we want to be able to generate a Docker file matching your extension. So an extension can adjust the Docker file. That should also allow you to say, hey, I'm using some other base images for the Docker file, and have a way to generate these Docker files. About build packs, there is actually, and we have it's not queued in yet, but there is actually a product for Quarkus build packs that is in place and can be used if you're into it. For those who like build packs, they should use it and look into it.
You mean OpenShift build packs, right?
No. So build like the build packs. What's it called? It's called build packs. The Spring build packs, and there's like
and like Picasso.
we created once.
Okay,
Source code build is, I think, an OpenShift, right? There is a specific build type on.
Yeah, those are the S2I builds.
So this is what we did for
build
some companies.
packs.
Okay, but okay.
Yeah.
S2I.
Yeah. So build packs is like let's call it a standardized version of what S2I does, with a little asterisks, because I'm just oversimplifying here. And I think products like Spring, they have a standard way for it, and we have the same thing for Quarkus. We just don't tend to use it because it's literally just used in the last step of packaging, and you can just do it just as you did here. You add a specific dependency, and things work. So I'm just saying, if you want to use build packs, you can with Quarkus. We just don't have it. We tend to just pick the simplest thing we can include that we know is used in production, whereas build packs takes a lot of, let's call them, decisions that makes it a bit hard to have as a default. But it's there. There is a Quarkus. I'll find it. There is a Quarkus build pack support out there. Yeah.
Okay, so what's also I used for
Sorry,
Docker.
Adam. We've got one more question. Well, actually, we've got lots more questions.
Maybe regarding the build packs, is there is a extension for Quarkus that generates the Docker images without Docker. This is also cool. I forgot the name. So we used it for automated Docker creation. It was from Google, the extension. I forgot the name. So this is a Quarkus extension, which is able to generate Docker and pushes this. This is what we used. And if I currently would use a Docker as my main project, what I will try to do is to create a Quarkus layer and deploy it, because I already know all my dependencies up front, push it to registry, and I did it with Whitefly for years, and then just ship, my business code there. This would be my attempt, which we always did with Whitefly. Yeah. And another question is with the versioned contracts, I think, not contacts, but the versioned, the system tests. This is the this is also versioned, and it can be versioned independently from the microservice, so you can check out all the version and see whether the newer service can be accessed by all the clients. So you get it out of the box with this approach.
And Safar's got a follow-on question about whether you would use a contract testing framework like Pact or something, or whether you would just kind of
because
do it at
this
that
was
level.
already good enough. But if this was so far good enough, right? And we have just MicroProfile, and if there is no reason to pick external framework, so my take on external frameworks is it has to be significant added value. And if there is just a little bit added value, we are not that interested, or I'm not interested. And meanwhile, lots of developers also not, because you don't have to care, you don't have to learn, and Okay. Cool. So what we have is we have the system tests. We have the you have to take a look at the slide. And what system testing, write once, run anywhere. This is no joke. So we were GraalVM. I think everyone did it. I think thousands of times I could run this on GraalVM. Right now, I can start it as jar. I can run it in Docker, which may be less common serverless. So I could attempt to deploy it to my cloud and see how it behaves. So Quarkus as serverless, and explain you actually how it works. If we have still time. Who is the master of ceremonies? So how much time do we have?
I think it's up to you, really. We're over, but we've got lots of questions, and you've got lots to talk about. So I think we're happy to carry on if you are.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Flattening the Docker image, expansion to tune container startup times. Yeah, this is what I don't have less experience right now, because if on premise we had GraalVM, and this was basically one image there. On GraalVM, it was always Mandrel, because Mandrel is like very specific GraalVM flavor, which only cares about native compilation, and it is supported by Red Hat. And GraalVM comes from Oracle and is polyglot, and we don't need polyglot for Quarkus. So this is why on OpenShift to use GraalVM, and this is what we did. And in the cloud, we never use GraalVM and never use Mandrel, because because what you saw on the slide is slide is closed.
And when you say Graal VM, you always talk about native builds, right?
With Quarkus, always native, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, always native builds in Quarkus. Other than that, outside Quarkus, we use Graal VM for polyglot mainly, or for for LLMs. But Quarkus is always native. So what's interesting here? Why 2 gigs? Because on AWS Lambda with 1769 megs, or almost 2 gigs, you get 1 CPU. Quarkus consumes as Lambda maybe 100 megs without any optimization. So I could actually pick this one, the smallest one, 128. But if you buy 128 megabyte of memory, you get 1/11 of the CPU. And Quarkus on one, or Java on 1/11 of the CPU has really bad startup times. Also, whatever, it is actually the performance is really bad. So so there are several tests, and what happened is, it turns out that Java on 1 CPU is the fastest, and if you add 2 gigabyte of RAM to this, it starts way faster. If you compare it to 128, so you still save money, and it runs faster than on 1/11. So this is my default. I always start with 1 CPU because I already know it. But with 2 gigabytes of RAM, I have far more memory that I can consume. We could cache whatever we like, but our application from the idle memory perspective in the cloud is idle, because we at most we consume 200 megs, and we have 2 gigs. So this is why it doesn't make any sense to use Mandrel in the cloud. Also, if you would run, Quarkus on Azure or AWS or Oracle Cloud, so what happens is, if you push it as serverless, you are using the JDK which is installed in the cloud. We are not shipping the JDK, so we don't care about the security flaws and so forth. But if I would use a native image, I will have to patch it constantly, and this is less serverless. It contradicts the serverless idea. So this is why in the cloud is different story. Two actually complete different architectures, right?
And I also think so. He's, I think Safra, who asked this question about the compression, etc. He comes from a Spring Boot area. I think make sure you actually try this and see if it actually matters. Because it does matter. Quarkus makes a difference, but also which cloud you deploy to is a difference, right? For example, the native image right now in Lambda, even though it starts faster and stuff, it is also giving a penalty because you run in your own container, and that actually starts slower than the JDK version in some cases, right? So it depends on your app. The stuff you think will behave a certain way, which you actually, when you do it, it's not. By giving more memory, you get more CPU, which gets a faster startup, and therefore you're faster than and use less memory money. And those dimensions are just different than people actually intuitively think.
Exactly. So if you dedicate a little memory, so you will pay more, and the application is slower. And what Zafar says, yes, Java is notorious for startup CPU drains. Yeah, but on AWS cloud, at the if Java starts, you get more CPU, and then it switches to what you dedicated. So actually, no problem there. At least with Quarkus. So it is absolutely okay. And my take on that is, in enterprise project, I go to my business department, whatever, and I say, okay, we are paying 15 euros a month, and sometimes you will have to wait 3 seconds, or we pay a few thousand euros a month, and you don't have to wait. So, and then it's okay. Then we pick the 15 euro version, and everyone is happy, right? So this is like, yeah, no kidding, because we can always optimize. And I think the fastest. And by the way, what we I think what's also the future is running Quarkus on bare metal, because what is true, if we would ship, let's say, serverless Quarkus, something like Netflix or YouTube or whatever, it will be way too expensive. We have several thousand transactions per second, lots of money, and serverless is more expensive than bare metal. But our trick is, in enterprise, no one works 24/7. They work maybe 8 hours a day, and then it's night, and we pay nothing then. And what I think, what is also future. We already thought about this, just renting a virtual machine, no Docker, nothing, and just put a GraalVM image or Mandrel image on it. Very easy to install. There is nothing else on the machine, a load balancer, and you're also happy. I think this is also a good alternative. And then Project Loom makes absolute sense there. Okay? And Project Loom on Lambda doesn't make any sense because there's only one thread at a time. So whether this is normal thread or virtual thread, no one cares, right? So
For sure.
Cool. So now, real world. So this is my template, and what happens behind the scenes is not a lot. This is my GitHub account, and it will clone this. I patched this today. I just upgraded to the newest CDK version, and this is my starting point to all commercial project on AWS. And I also have one on Azure, but right now most of the projects are on AWS. But with Quarkus, it doesn't make a lot of difference, so I can use both. Support SSE servers and events, of course, and also Quarkus ships with new WebSocket support, which is nice. So yeah, but this is what also Max can answer, or Holly, because Quarkus always supported servers and events. It was also part of.
Yeah, I think he's talking about the REST client.
REST client.
Yeah, I've just I've pasted in a link to the docs for that, so it's supported, and the support got a lot better in 3.6 apparently.
What we also do, I have to say, in recent projects, we prefer Java 11 HTTP client over MicroProfile because it's easy enough. This is also very easy, so you don't have to use the MicroProfile. You can even for testing use the built-in Java 11 client is somehow new. It's already very old, but it ships with Java 21 plus. So I call it serverless real-world Quarkus, the project. So it clones the project, should open two IDEs, which happened. One is Lambda, and if you take a look, what happens here is it is actually exactly the code I wrote before. You see hello application scoped, and the greeter is injected here. Oh, what I forgot to mention, what we also use, we use Java-Lang system logger, for instance, because it's mapped to the JBoss log manager anyway, and we have done no dependency. I never use log4j, for instance, so I never had the trouble with the security flaws. And this is basically Lambda. So this is a Lambda. It is configured. Why is so many commented out extensions? Because this project is not only capable to run as a Lambda behind API gateway, it can be a load balancer, depends on the costs, right? So if you have I would say highly scalable application, then application load balancer is cheaper than API gateway. For typical enterprise projects, API gateway is cheaper than the load balancer. And today I would use function URL, which is the simplest possible deployment, but the DNS looks horrible, but is very good for experimentation. So this is basically the same project as before, but it comes with the extension here. This is already predefined extension. So what I did before, right? So what's also interesting is this is a CDK. It means I also use Java for infrastructure as code. It means this has nothing to do with Quarkus. But what happens here is I say, okay, I create a small builder around AWS CDK, and I say I would like to have Airhex Quarkus on Lambda on, let's say, real world Quarkus. And I have here function URL builder. It was created by me with nicer methods. In production, we don't use it, but for presentation it looks nicer. But I could pick API gateway or CloudFront, which ships with nicer certificate support. By the way, Snapstart supported out the box. What was the crack? And yeah. Okay, so if it doesn't work, I will go dark for a second, because then it means my credentials expired. Serverless, and now say build and deploy, don't ask. And what happens behind the scenes? Actually nothing. There are two Maven projects, as shown in a second. I'm just curious whether the deployment will work. So this is some stuff I have to update behind the scenes, Node.js, exactly. So I will have to add the credentials. Maybe questions from the, so now I'm dark and I have now time to pick my credentials.
There was a question earlier. I think we missed
Was the change data capture? Was that the one?
Well, we can take this one.
Yeah, there was a nice philosophical one for Adam about your experiences with change data capture and CQRS and K-stream-based applications using Quarkus, also from Zafar.
And Kafka streams was also good. Exactly. Very good. And this is an excellent question because we use a lot of Debezium in projects. And with Quarkus and in a second, I will just open my browser and then I'm back to live. Okay, back to live. And let's see. And if it deploys, I will explain the Kafka streams. Yeah, looks better. Now, K-streams. Excellent question, actually. So if we use Kafka, I always try to use Kafka streams. I don't even understand why you should use Kafka and ship byte arrays over the wire. I mean, this is and Kafka streams. What it means is we have more or less business topics, and we have joins between the topics. We have window functions, lots of added business value. And in such projects, we have Quarkus applications without JAX-RS. It just listens to, for instance, we have Quarkus apps. They just combine two topics, two K-streams. Works perfectly. So CDC and Debezium is crucial and very important because with this technology, you are able to have single transaction which writes to Postgres database or Oracle, and in the same transaction, looks good. This is just, I will have to upgrade my account, but this is the URI. But with the you have in the same transaction, you can write to a database and then capture the event and write to Kafka, because CDC, so the Debezium, hooks into the transaction manager of the database, and we used a lot such projects, and they were just perfect for this purposes. In one project, we have huge database, and we are not able to touch it because the client was afraid that if we perform a query, we can slow down the database. It was production database for production system. And with Debezium, we could replicate this database to Postgres or whatever, and we had our own cache of data. So yes, we use a lot Debezium, CDC, and Quarkus. Works perfectly. And we used, I think it was MicroProfile messaging, I think is the specs, Morai messaging, and Quarkus also supported this very well. Okay, nice. Now watch this. So what this is, with a little bit of luck, and curl T is a macro which measures the performance, the time, and this is the coldest start you can have, and is hello. If I call this is the very first time everything starts, not only Quarkus, and you see this cold start time was 3.8 seconds. This is now our Lambda with, and if I do it again, it is like milliseconds. And this is now two such transactions per second the entire month, and I will pay 15 euros. And now it returns in 0.7 milliseconds the entire round trip to Frankfurt and back with MicroProfile. So this is complete MicroProfile application. And what happened behind the scenes, this is a CloudFormation. And right now, my serverless real-world Quarkus was shipped, deployed. This is infrastructure as code, completely coded with Java. And my Lambda, Quarkus Lambda, is here, real-world Quarkus. And I could even configure this with Java and use dependency injection MicroProfile to inject, because I think in the configuration, there should be environment variables. You see, no, the Java, there's, I could specify a message, for instance, and make it injectable. But this was live deployment of our Lambda Quarkus. And now it comes. I have the Quarkus here, right, in the cloud. And let's see. I could actually also call it this way. Hello, Quarkus on AWS. But what I can also do, now kill everything and say, switch to Lambda and go with Maven Quarkus dev. And I can launch my Lambda locally and test it. And this is unique. So just go here and localhost 8080 hello. And this is my Lambda locally. Right?
Cool.
This is really cool. I mean, this is not only cool, it's simple. What I like about this is my old code, 20 years old code, and now we can save money once again. So it is like, I would say, a huge success story. So this is incredible. If I show this to managers, to the developers, they don't believe me. They ask, is it Lambda? It's like, yeah. And can you have multiple endpoints? Say, yeah. And even this Lambda, I actually, I think I added an endpoint. Yeah. Now they are. No, there's only one. But I implemented an example. No, two. You see. So there is a time. So there are two endpoints because no one could believe that is actually two endpoints possible for Lambda. And I have now hello and time. But you can have hundreds of endpoints. No one cares. So as many as you like. So with time, you get the time. Yeah.
Amazing. That's the thing we have to remind people. Like we used to this being normal, but that's not normal in some cases. Yeah. So yeah. The one thing we just skipped was there was one who asked for, do you have any recent stats on Spring Boot versus Quarkus with regards to speed and efficiency?
So I have no experience with Spring Boot. Whatever I do is Quarkus. But I can tell you, it was WJAX conference, and I did this on stage more or less. And people came to me and say, okay, what is it? This is crazy. And they say, okay, is it Quarkus? Is it like my old stuff? And they say, because we have to do Spring Boot and it's a lot slower. So it seems like Spring Boot is a lot slower, but I can tell you. What I know that if someone sees that, okay, this is interesting. And I only saw this in one project, that the cold start of Spring Boot was too slow for Lambda. And the interesting part is, again, that Quarkus is fast enough without Mandrel or GraalVM. This is the interesting point for me, because I don't have to package my own GraalVM in the cloud. I can use whatever is available in the cloud.
Yeah, and now what you were saying here, this is like what's called music to our ears, because that's what we keep saying is that Spring, for example, has native support, etc. But we don't need native support for Lambda. Like we start fast enough. You can always go faster with GraalVM. But again, I say we generally also don't want to say one is faster than the other, except, we don't publish like performance numbers, that kind of thing. There is Tech and Power if you want to see some comparison, but otherwise use your own, your own setup in your environment, because it matters a lot where you are. But in general, we always treat, if someone shows a Spring Boot app that is faster than Quarkus, as a bug, right? And then we always treat that we just know fundamentally the way Quarkus is architected, it cannot be slower than Spring. So that's an inherent design we have, inherent outlook we have. So
yeah, and
we know
not to bash on this spying boot, as someone said, on the code name spying boot, because it's the same for application servers, right? I would, to my knowledge, is that the architecture of Wildfire, Quarkus, and OpenLiberty is similar somehow to Spring Boot, because it is based on dynamic behavior. So all the application servers back then were proud to be able to, at the runtime, load and unload modules and stuff like that. And Quarkus is the opposite for speed, which is so it has to be faster, right? So and I think the only thing which is similar to Quarkus is Micronaut. I would say this is a similar technology to and I know people told me that Quarkus is a bit faster than Micronaut, but I have to say I don't care. Why I prefer Quarkus is because it supports MicroProfile almost completely, so I can migrate a lots of old stuff to Quarkus. So this is which, even if Micronaut will be faster, it would be in my project, I would like to have MicroProfile. I don't like to be too dependent on Micronaut, right? So, yeah.
Sure.
And this is actually the gist of the deployment. This is what's really great. What I say here is, I would like to have Java 21, and I don't care what it is, because I would like that the cloud provider patches Java for me. If I would ship GraalVM, I will have to ship GraalVM with Quarkus, but I will also have to, to take ownership of the GraalVM, patch it, and watch it, which I don't like to have. And this was the question: snap start. If snap start, I can have ARM or Intel, which is no more true. Snap start is available on both. I will have actually to change the code. But a tip: Quarkus runs perfectly on ARM64, and you can save another 10%. And this is even faster. It is more energy efficient. So all my projects are actually right now on ARM64.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think now we got to the end of the question.
I think so. Yep. I think now all we've got is compliments.
Any of you should ask me a question, at least one, because there was lots of controversial stuff. I was a little bit afraid that, and so if I delete, the rest assured, but there was no reaction from your side. So this was.
No, we can handle most things. So,
Adam, how you see the whole thing about Java versus Python and all this AI craze? Do you see it in the market? People like thinking whether Java is still relevant, or what's your view?
Yeah, LLMs, right? So this is another topic. So I'm working on large project, commercial project with enterprise, and some project are now for 20 years there. And now I get the question from management: we need at least a statement what to do with LLMs. They don't like, so Java and LLMs. Should we ship Python or whatever? And the great story is that Java actually does extremely well with LLMs. You can load, Llama on Java. This is what I actually did several times at conferences. Even if you go to DevOps, I did it live, and Java User Group Helsinki last week as well. And Java gets better and better. And also, what I found per accident, they gives a framework called DJL. This is DLJ.ai. Is deep Java learning from Amazon actually. And I thought, okay, can we talk about this on the net or not? But I found a reference, and it seems like, according to the reference there, this is open, that Amazon internally uses Java to not Python for inference to increase speed, because Java is multi-threaded and Python is not. So I think most of the project use Java for inference, and Python is actually completely slow. The only thing which Python does, it calls C, right? So it's not like the inference happens in Python. Python is very good to calling C libraries, and what they did with the DJL or DLJ, I always forget it. So they are calling from Java directly to the LLMs, and also Project Valhalla, Babylon, they are going in the right direction. Tornado VM, and we have two. I think in longer term. I don't know whether you attempted, to install Python. I mean, this is hell on earth. I maybe you use this, okay, but in one project, I only had to install Python to log into a portal, and I spent half a day, and then I said, this is crazy. And then I went to, before ChatGPT, to Stack Overflow, and I was not alone. There was like Python 3 and PIP 3, and I had a lot of Pythons on my machine. But and in Java, what's cool with Quarkus, I have to back to Quarkus, right? There's a project, I don't know whether you heard about this, it's called LangChain4j. So and this is
sorry, what's that?
And the cool story is, because these are extensions, you can package actually this Quarkus with the extensions, and I hope even one day the LLMs to one file, and then have in CI/CD just the file. Otherwise, I will have to install in my CI/CD, because I care about CI/CDs a lot, because I have to do this infrastructure as code and stuff like that. But with Python, for me, mission impossible. With Quarkus, very possible. I put the entire thing to S3, pull it, and it works, right? So I would say there will be huge comeback for Java. if someone recognizes that. And at the DevOps, I also did it on stage. People came to me and say, this is impossible, that this was pure Java. They say, this is a DLL or whatever you had, SO. Like, no, this was pure Java. And it is not, so you can have 10 tokens per second in pure Java. And what I also like about, we have a lot of CDI, MicroProfile, we have fault tolerance. And for me, this LangChain4j is like a pragmatic ESB for LLMs. So we are in the middle as application, and we can inject all the LLMs as microservices. We can treat the microservices, the LLMs as microservices, and build very efficient applications. And I think with Python, it would be hardly possible. So I would say big time, we can combine, let's say, bin validator with LLMs, right? So in a bank, you say, okay, we can have a use case where we validate an address. So we can have a bin validator, which calls on small LLM, validates and know whether it's a fraud or not, and they were immediately interested, right? So so I think what's also intermediary future is not necessarily agentic UIs, because I don't think the power users in enterprises are interested, to chat with someone. But I think the future right now for us would be have a boring, form and an LLM behind this for power users. I think this is, and we can do this all the time with Quarkus, right?
Yeah. Cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think we see the similar thing. There's this hype now, but sooner or later, people realize that AI is like this missing 20% on the existing 80% application, and it's not like big deal to add it, and you don't have to renew everything on top of Python just because. So, yeah.
And Adam, just because see it here, you ask, being able to embed it all in one, you can actually do that today. It's still experimental, but there is a JLAM supporting Quarkus and LangChain4j.
Because I see MCP. This is Quarkus on MCP.
Well, yeah.
What this is a prototype, for instance. What it does is I can expose my runtime information via MCP to Claude, for instance, and we can ask questions to know when our service will die. This is like MCP with Quarkus and tool support, because Zafar asked. Very possible. That's all, and it's completely integrated with Claude. This is a model context protocol with Claude. Funny story. I was at chat with Anthropic guys, and it showed me Python, and I showed them Java this, and they say, this is incredible. This is Java. I was like, yeah, this is very lean. We have to do something about that. It's like, yeah, sure, because with Python is far more code, right? So.
Yeah. No, you have there's even an MCP servers product that we show it for how to do JWC and Kubernetes and a few others.
This is your project, actually, right? This is the Quarkus MCP.
Yeah, well, so we did the Quarkus MCP, and I did the MCP servers just to show them
MCP STDIO. This is the beta 2 what I'm evaluating right now.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's there. So it works, and it's actually fun to do.
And the cool story is for enterprise developers is LLMs are just microservices, and MCP for me is like Java Connector architecture, JCA, the old one, right? So there is we have LLM, and LLM would like to have a standardized way to talk to someone. This is our application server, and with MCP we can provide injection, dependency injection, basically tool or resource is like access to file system, right? This is very similar to JCA. So I think as Java developer, we did it everything, and we can redo it once again with LLMs. It's very similar. So yeah.
Well, I violently agree with you, Adam.
And then we can add JBank to the equation, and then we're way better than Python, I guess, right?
The MCP server actually used JBank to not have you to install Python or something else. So it actually works. So no, for sure. Cool.
I think we've got to the bottom of the questions.
I think so too. I just say, Safar says we can convert Python Fast API endpoints to Quarkus. Yes, for sure. That's and you can even use an LM for that. So it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So yeah. No.
Very cool. Fun for me.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam. I think everybody really enjoyed it. So yeah, lots of good insights.
Yeah, thank you. It was basically Hello World, but if you like it, I'm glad.
Yeah, no, I think some of the usage patterns that you have are really interesting, and yeah, lots to think about and lots of recommendations to go forward with for people.
Down to earth software development. That's what the title should have been.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, Adam.
Awesome.
Thank you a lot.
Thank
See you next time.
See you all.
you.